Anthony, you with us? Anthony? You okay with Anthony there? So thank you all for coming today. We're gathered here today to talk about George Santos. George Santos' campaign last year, 2022, was... Hello, Anthony. George Santos' campaign last year was a campaign of deceit, lies, and fabrication. He deceived the voters of the 3rd Congressional District. He deceived the members of the Nassau County Republican Committee, elected officials, his colleagues, candidates, his opponents, and even some of the media. His lies were not mere fibs. He disgraced the House of Representatives, and in particular, his fabrications went too far. Many groups were hurt. Specifically, I look at those families that were touched by the horrors of the Holocaust and feel for them. He has no place in the Nassau County Republican Committee, nor should he serve in public service, nor as an elected official. He's not welcome here at Republican headquarters for meetings or at any of our events. As I said, he's disgraced the House of Representatives, and we do not consider him one of our congresspeople. Today, on behalf of the Nassau County Republican Committee, I am calling for his immediate resignation. Ladies and gentlemen, the supervisor of the town of North Hempstead, Jen DeSena. Jen?
Thank you, Chairman Cairo. Today, I'm calling on George Santos to immediately resign from Congress for the 3rd District. The lies George Santos told are too numerous to count. He lied to me personally when he sought my endorsement, and while I'm offended and disgusted at his deceit, my true concern is for the residents of the 3rd Congressional District. He has betrayed the public's trust and given insincere, glib, and insulting answers when asked legitimate questions about his finances and his background. By all accounts, he seems incapable and unwilling to take full responsibility for his lies and fabrications. Beyond all that, he is under local, state, and federal investigations as serious questions have arisen about his campaign finances. There's absolutely no way Mr. Santos can be an effective member of Congress and represent the people who elected him. The longer he remains in office, the longer the residents of the 3rd Congressional District will suffer. Mr. Santos, haven't you done enough harm? I call on Mr. Santos to immediately resign. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Congressman Anthony D'Esposito. Anthony?
Good morning, Chairman. I'm sorry that I can't be with you all in Nassau County this morning. I'm here in the nation's capital doing the work of the people of the People's House and those people who trusted me with representing them in Washington, D.C. And speaking of trust, my colleague, George Santos, has violated the trust of not only the voters and not only of people across America. It seems that both things that he's discussed during his campaign were outright lies. And I think that what's most important as a public servant is treating the public with respect and gaining and earning their trust, something that all of you behind that podium have done. As we move forward into the 118th Congress, only sworn in just a couple nights ago at about 2 a.m. At this point, and I don't think that George Santos can move forward as a member of Congress that people hired to do here in our nation's capital. So I join with you and I join with my colleagues in saying that George Santos does not have the ability to serve here in the House of Representatives and should resign.
Thank you, Anthony. County Executive Bruce Blakeman.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Nassau County has approximately 1.5 million people. We are larger than 10 states. Half of Nassau County is in the 3rd Congressional District. In that congressional district, like the rest of the county, there is a large population of people who identify themselves legitimately as being Jewish. Of some of those Jewish people that live in Nassau County, like myself, we go to shul, we go and worship, and we take our religion seriously and our heritage seriously. When George Santos spoke about his college education, what we found out was audacious. When he called himself a Jew, that was ridiculous. But what was really tragic is the fact that there are so many people here in Nassau County who are survivors of the Holocaust. They're children of the Holocaust, grandchildren of the Holocaust, great-grandchildren. These are people whose families were decimated and in many instances wiped out. We're talking about whole families that were shot to death, that were gassed to death, that were starved to death. And for him to make up this story that his parents were Holocaust survivors is beyond the pale. It is simply tragic and outrageous and disgusting. And I join here with my colleagues in government calling for George Santos' resignation because he cannot serve anymore. He does not deserve that right. He is a stain on the House of Representatives. He's a stain on the 3rd Congressional District. And as of today, I have ordered my staff that any federal constituent calls that come into the county executive's offices will now be referred to Congressman Anthony D'Esposito, that Congressman D'Esposito has graciously accepted that responsibility. My office will have no interaction with George Santos or his staff until he resigns. Thank you.
Thank you. State Senator Jack Martins.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I stand here with my colleagues in calling for George Santos to resign. The 3rd Senate District is wholly within the Congressional District. The 7th Senate District is wholly within the 3rd Congressional District. It's about half the district. It's now been 2 months since the election, nearly a month since the story broke in the New York Times. We've gotten comments from Santos. We've gotten excuses from Santos. These aren't embellishments. These are lies. And George Santos is a fraud. And so here we are, together, united, understanding that much the same way my colleagues have already spoken to the issue, we will not be working with our congressmen when it comes to addressing issues. I have over 40 villages in my Senate district, 2 towns and a city. And each and every one of them have told me that they will not be working with congressmen, with Santos. That speaks volumes to where we are today. The inability of this person to actually exercise and perform the duties as a member of Congress and as a representative of nearly 750,000 people here in Nassau County. The people of Nassau County deserve better. We, as a community, need to come together. And frankly, as we understand, it is probably impossible to shame the shameless. It is probably impossible for us to get someone who has no shame to do what is right. But here we stand united in sending a message that until he is removed, by one way or another, we will move forward. We will continue to perform our services and our responsibilities as elected officials here in Nassau County. We will continue to represent the residents and citizens of Nassau County, and we will continue to do the people's work. But it will not include Santos. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Patricia Canzoneri Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Chairman Cairo. Today is indeed a very sad day in that we must call for the resignation of Congressman George Santos. The public trust has been violated in numerous ways, and there is no way for the public to ever have faith in his word. As a mom of 4 who has tried to be a leader and an example to my children of what it means to be a public servant, to work for the people, to be trustworthy, and to stick to the promises that you make. He is the antithesis of what every person behind me and next to me is. It is a great stain on the Republican Party of Nassau County today that he worked with us. He does not represent our values, our commitment to be honest, hardworking government servants. Every person behind me is absolutely deserving of the honor of representing the public, and George Santos is not. So I too call for his resignation, and I am particularly offended also as a representative of the 5 towns and the Orthodox community that what he did regarding his religious status was exceptionally offensive. And for them, I stand here and ask that he step down. Thank you.
Thank you. Our Assembly Delegation Leader, Assemblyman Ed Ra.
Thank you, Chairman. I join with all of my colleagues, Chairman Cairo, and on behalf of our Assembly delegation in calling on George Santos to resign. The public trust, once broken, cannot be repaired. And George Santos has broken that trust, and it is not possible to be an effective representative when you don't have the trust of your constituents. So for the good of the residents of the 3rd District, I join my colleagues in calling on George Santos to resign. Thank you.
Thank you. Our County Controller, Elaine Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman Cairo. So I too joined my colleagues and demand that George Santos steps down from his position. I personally have spent my entire career, both in the private sector and as an elected public official, upholding integrity and honesty, as have my colleagues. So both as a resident of the congressional district and an elected official whose job is to protect the taxpayers of Nassau County, I stand with my colleagues and say, George Santos needs to step down. Thank you.
Thank you. The presiding officer of the Nassau County Legislature, Rich Nicolello. Rich.
Thank you, Chairman. It now appears that everything that George Santos said about himself was a lie. He lied to get the nomination. He lied to the electorate. He lied to get elected. And as has been said before, those lies, the pervasive, extensive nature of those lies, have done violence to the public trust. Now, all the people that I serve with that are here with us today, and those other elected officials that were not here, Republicans and Democrats, the vast number of them serve with sincerity, honesty, integrity, commitment, dedication. They're hardworking. And something like this scandalous behavior, does damage to all of our reputations, because there's part of our public that's cynical about politicians and public officials in general. So it's time for George Santos, for once, to do the right thing. And I, on behalf of the 12 members of the Republican majority, call on him to step aside. Thank you.
Thank you. Legislator Mazi Philip. Mazi.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I'm also very disappointed by the lies told by Congressman-elected George Santos. People trusted him. People voted for him. People campaigned for him, including me as a county legislator. At this point, the trust no longer there. Therefore, he should resign. Thank you.
Thank you. Town of Hempstead Supervisor Don Clavin. Donald?
Thank you, Chairman. Look, it comes down to the following. You know, when you build something on lies and no ethics and no responsibility, there's accountability. George Santos has no business serving in Congress. On behalf of all the board members, and frankly, the 750,000 residents live in the town of Hempstead, it's time to go. It's time to get out. You know what? You see a unified voice here. You know what? He's unified the country in their opposition to him. He's a national joke. He's an international joke. But this joke's got to go. And it's on us calling him for him to resign immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Thank you all.
Thank you. Supervisor of the Town of Oyster Bay, Joe Saladino.
Thank you, Chairman. Over the past few weeks, we've learned from the media almost daily about the lies and dishonesty of George Santos. We've been shocked by this and the extent in which George Santos misled us. Our residents deserve better, much better. We deserve honesty and ethics. My colleagues and I on the Oyster Bay Town Board govern with such principles, and we demand the same from our state and our federal representatives. Multiple reported investigations are underway. We await their outcome. Mr. Santos has admitted lying time and time again, and we in government, just like the people we represent, are deeply disappointed. As supervisor of the largest township in the 3rd Congressional District, I join with my colleagues on the town board, the elected officials in our community, and all of us in Nassau County Republican team when we ask Mr. Santos to resign immediately. George, I'm speaking to you. It's time to step down.
Thank you. The Mayor of Glen Cove, Pam Panzenbach. Pam?
Hello, I'm the Mayor of Glen Cove, and we are the only city in the 3rd Congressional District. We were all duped, and we're appalled and angered at how George Santos misled us, lied to us, and what a fraud he actually is. And that stands for me as the mayor and my entire city council. We need a congressman to work for us. George needs to step down immediately. Right after this press conference, if he gets to see it, it's time for you to resign, George. We need representation that we can count on. He's told so many lies, he doesn't know what the truth is, and he's making a mockery out of the entire congressional system. Thank you.
Thank you. Our County Clerk, Maureen O'Connell. Maureen?
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everyone. As many of you know, the County Clerk's office has hundreds of Nassau County residents who come in every single day, either for court operations access or for property records access, and to file documents and to have us do notaries for them. And I have to tell you, almost to a person, the public that has been coming in the last several weeks have asked me outright, what do we need to do about this George Santos? And frankly, they trust me. As many of you know, I'm a registered nurse, besides being a lawyer. And they trust my judgment and my honesty and directness with them. And if this gentleman was in any other profession, he would be fired immediately for lying about his credentials. Imagine this, lying about your credentials. It's just unacceptable, and this man must resign immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our speakers. Yes. Well, I think to begin with, in 2020, George Santos, a Queens Republican, came to us to seek our endorsement. We have a standard process that we followed. We trusted people. He went through an interview process with committee members, members of our party. He answered the questions, obviously not truthfully, but at that time we trusted him. He submitted a resume which is totally untruthful. And so based upon the answers to the questions, based upon the fact that he was recommended from Queens County, based upon the fact that he submitted a resume in writing with credentials, we supported his nomination. Obviously, we have learned in the past few weeks that much of it was fabricated and untrue. We are now going to change our process. Shame on me for believing people, but over the years we've gone through a similar process, and we have many fine elected officials and many fine candidates who were unsuccessful. So we will obviously adapt that system. We also, as far as Speaker McCarthy, I have not spoken to him, but all of our candidates from last year, our elected officials, have all spoken unified today that we are calling for his resignation, and we will obviously pass that on to the Speaker.
What has Mr. McCarthy told you or your associates about what he's going to do?
He hasn't told us. I haven't spoken to the Speaker.
Why call for him to resign today? Why now after he was sworn in?
Yeah, so I'll just speak for myself. I'm a firm believer in due process. I think that in this country, if you're accused of something, you have an opportunity to clear your name. However, in this circumstance, the situation has become untenable for me as an elected official, as I'm sure it has for my colleagues, and that is, how do you deal with somebody who is an out-and-out liar? And I couldn't stomach doing that anymore. I came to that conclusion very recently, and while I do believe in due process, I think that we don't need the process to unfold. He's basically confessed, and he needs help. This is not a normal person. A person who tells that length and breadth of lies, built one on top of the other, is not a normal person. He needs to get help. And the bottom line is, this is a forgiving country. It is a compassionate country. And if he does get help and he shows true remorse, there will be a future for George Santos. But until he stops deluding himself that he can continue in Congress, I want nothing to do with him, and I'm not going to deal with his office.
He just said he will not resign. He just spoke to reporters a moment ago and said he will not resign. What is your reaction?
He should resign. That's why we're all here today calling upon him to do that. Excuse me?
If he does resign, who will you appoint to run in a special election?
Well, there's no vacancy now, and that's a premature question. And at that time, if there is a vacancy, if he does resign and there's a special election, then obviously we'll choose the person who we feel is best qualified to serve.
Chairman, is there
Yes.
a political consideration in all of you coming together like this? I mean, are you concerned that George Santos could hurt the party?
I think George Santos is an exception to the rule. I think George Santos has shown his true colors. I hope that the people of Nassau County, both next year in November, or this year, later this year in November, will view the issues as they did the past 2 years, and will look at our candidates and make their judgment based upon that, and not based on one individual who unfortunately was not truthful and ran on our line.
Has anyone up here spoken to him since all of this broke?
I spoke to him once after it broke, and he assured me that he would clear everything up within a few days, and that's the last time that we've been able to speak to him. I think that the ethics committee in the Congress, and I know from what I've read in the papers, not for any other through any other means, that the various investigative agencies, perhaps including, federal agencies and local agencies, are looking into some of the transactions during his campaign.
Mr. Chairman, are you concerned, Carl Campanile, New York Post, various Santos campaign committees have donated a lot of money to the Nassau County Republican Party. Are you concerned that some of that money might be dirty money or not?
No, what we did, Carl, is this. What we did is that monies that we had received on his behalf, we spent during the campaign on lawn signs and things of that nature. He donated approximately $126,000 from a committee to the Republican Committee, and we returned that money. Any funds that he gave us, we've returned to his committee. The committee that donated to us, we gave back to them.
When did the Nassau County GOP really start to resuspect or to figure out a much of his resume was untrue or flat out lie. Was it before or after George Santos?
No, before the election. Again, we trusted him. I take responsibility for that on behalf of the committee. We trusted him. We vetted him. He was a Queens Republican, recommended to us. He answered questions. When you ask a would-be candidate questions, you expect that he's going to be honest. He gave us a resume in writing with his credentials, with his educational background, where he lived, his business background, et cetera. There was no reason to, I don't believe there was any reason to question it. After the campaign, when this came to light, obviously, we looked at it. I believe in giving everyone the benefit of a doubt. We spoke to him once, as I just said to Rich, and he assured me that there were mistakes and he would clear it up. And of course, that was the last time we spoke to him. Obviously not. No, obviously not. He continues, unfortunately, he continues to lie, and we can't have someone like that. We can't have someone like that serving in Congress representing the people in Nassau. And as importantly, as I said on or about December 30th, he will not have the endorsement of this committee should he choose to seek election in 2024 if he's still in office or if he's removed and decides to run again. Yeah, we're going to do more of an investigation. I didn't think we had to, that we had to play that role, but I assume now that, or I know now that we do. And so in the past where we had people answer questions and submit a resume. And you see, the unfortunate thing is if people come from Nassau County, we know them, perhaps they've served in other office, or we know their neighbors, we know people who know them, family connections, et cetera. With George Santos, he came from Queens. And quite candidly, to speak to you very honestly, in 2020, the Democrats had a strong district, they had a strong incumbent, and people were not knocking down the door to run. And so when he was recommended to us, we vetted him, we thought significantly at that time, or sufficiently, and unfortunately it turned out not to be that way.
Were there any red flags raised early on, like when he donated $700,000 from his, personal account, anything like that?
Now, see, what happens is this. Campaign committees are run in a certain way. We have Republican committees here, finance committees. When you get on the federal level, it's very different. We are very limited in what we can do. We don't monitor the campaign committees, neither of Anthony or Garbarino, who runs in part of Nassau, or Santos. So that all came to light afterwards. I was unaware that he had donated, contributed, or loaned, or whatever terminology is appropriate.
What would you like to see House Republican leadership do? They've been very silent on this.
Well, we've called upon them. We've called upon him today to resign, and I would hope that they would support us. We're talking about the people of Nassau County. We're not talking about the 435 members or thereabouts that come from throughout the country to Washington. We're talking about the people of Nassau County. They deserve better. All of the elected officials feel this way, and so we're calling upon him to resign today.
And you've talked about waiting, Michael Gold from the Times, you've talked about waiting after our first story to get an explanation. The county executive also talked about feeling like this was kind of a slow build, but I'm wondering if there was a clear turning point for you in this. From my end, we watched your responses evolve and shift over the last few weeks. What brought you here? What was the thing that finally...
I think it's a combination of everything. I think it's a combination of listening to people in the community. I think of reading the various media outlets. I think some of the things, you exaggerate. Someone says, I graduated with honors when I didn't. I mean, he didn't go to Baruch, His grandparents were not Holocaust victims. He lied about, he had said that he owned a place in Whitestone he was selling. He had told me he was looking, after the election, he was looking for a place in Brookville, that he had made an offer on a home. Now I see he's being evicted from an apartment. Just lie after lie after lie. It became a pattern. And I think when we saw that pattern develop, though giving him the benefit of the doubt, and as Bruce said, giving him time to explain, he didn't do it. And it's obvious now that it's all a bunch of lies and fabrications.
Hey, Joe, is there any legal maneuvers that the Nassau County GOP or any officials out there can do to force him out of office or at least pressure him to resign?
We've called upon his resignation. I think that while there are ongoing investigations by federal and local authorities, we have not been contacted in that regard, I think that we should let that play out.
Before the story broke, what were your impressions of him?
He came from outside the county. We didn't know him. He was very energetic, ready to run. This is in 2020 in a very tough district. He ran a fairly good campaign. After the campaign, he blamed us, perhaps specifically me, for not supporting him well enough in 2020. He thought he won. The election night results were such that he was ahead. looking at the absentee ballots and seeing, don't forget, then he ran in Suffolk, Nassau, and Queens in 2020. So when I looked at the absentee ballots, I knew he wasn't going to win. He went to Washington for orientation, stayed a few days, and left. He then, as might be expected, was upset, disappointed, perhaps even an angry young man. He blamed the Nassau County Republican Committee for not supporting him sufficiently. A few weeks went by, maybe it was December of 2020, he called, said he'd like to come in. He came in, there were a group of us there, he apologized, said he was sorry, he made a mistake, perhaps in his youth. He was very excited when he understood that he was not elected. He reacted accordingly. He apologized, he asked for a second chance. I told him he'd have to earn that chance. 2021 came, and then the election, and again, the districts were changed. At that time, the district was very strong Democrat. It went from no longer Suffolk, but across northern Nassau through Queens, over the bridge or under the water through the Bronx to Mamaroneck. People were not, no elected officials were coming forward. We carried petitions. He was our candidate, designated our candidate, and then an action was brought by Republicans. The Court of Appeals upheld the lower court. The special master and the judge upstate became involved, and all of a sudden the district went from being a very difficult district to a winnable district. The Bronx and Mamaroneck were gone, replaced by Levittown and Massapequa. He was already our candidate. He ran. We supported him. He won. And unfortunately, this occurred. So he was not someone that we knew. He was not someone who grew up in Nassau or in Nassau politics, hadn't served in the assembly or a council person as many people have. Garbarino in Suffolk, who represents part of Nassau, Anthony, having served as a councilman. We trusted him, and shame on us for doing that.
How was he able? Nobody seemed to ask the question.
I think that the donors that I know that contributed to him, and I don't know many of them. Someone asked me last week, one of the media, about some donor, and I never heard of the gentleman. They said he had some connections overseas. I think the people that I know, they just believed. They believed in the Republican Party. They do believe in Republican principles and philosophy, and they supported him as they might have supported any other Republican in that district, especially when they saw that the odds were changed and it was no longer a district cut for Mario Biaggi's granddaughter from the Bronx, but rather now it was a competitive district where we could win. So I think whomever the candidate might have been on the Republican ticket, with the issues and with the wave perhaps that we anticipated, I think they jumped on board for that reason.
Joe, it's not common for the Nassau Republican Party to back a candidate that you don't know, who hasn't served in county, town,
Right.
village government, etc. Who made the recommendation to you?
It came from Queens County at the time, the Queens County Republicans, not enthusiastically, but again, if you recall back in 2020, the Democrat incumbent was strong. It was a Democrat district, so again, people weren't knocking down our doors. There were a few people who expressed interest, but no one who we felt had the credentials to win the district.
Joe, I think you said before they came to you with a resume that there was some sort of background information you were receiving from him about his career. Could you just explain what was on that resume?
Well, to my recollection, it said he went to Baruch College, said he went to NYU. He later, or perhaps at the interview, I didn't attend it, that he sought a master's degree, said that he worked in finance. I don't recall, was it Citigroup, I think. Said he was very successful, told me personally that he had made a lot of money at that age and was successful in life. We got into it, started getting personal about the fact that he came from a poor background, but that he was able to be very successful. Told me, I remember specifically, I'm into sports a little bit, that he was a star on the Baruch volleyball team and that they won the league championship. And what can I tell you? Yeah.
How angry are you that he's pretty much everyone, and how do you characterize this entire situation? Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, I've never seen it, and I hope never to see it again. I'm disappointed, and we learn from our experience, and our vetting process has to be much more, has to go much deeper. We have to really investigate backgrounds now. It's sad, but it's true, and I think that holds true for both parties, and I'm not commenting on the other party, and I have the utmost respect for their leadership and for Jay, but I think that it's interesting too that we ran a campaign and he won, and these issues didn't come up, by his opponents. And I hold them in very high regard. I have on a personal basis, not politically, I respect Robert Zimmerman. I respect Jay, and what can I tell you? It's a sad moment.
Congressman Santos has said for a few days now that he would address oral questions to the media. He's told reporters on the Hill basically every time they run into him that he's going to make a statement at some point. Is there anything he could say to get you to rethink this today? Or
No, listen, never say never, but we're pretty close to never.
And you had mentioned earlier that you won't be working with him as far as his constituents go. You're going to be directing them to D'Esposito's office. Is that feasible? I mean, it seems like many people with questions or concerns probably won't be calling his office.
It's absolute. Bruce wants to come, but it's absolutely feasible. Andrew Garbarino also represents a small portion in Nassau, but we have many years. The last time we swept was in 1994. So we have many years where we didn't have a Republican, representative of a major part of Nassau County. Peter King, of course, for 28 years. So it is workable. Bruce?
Yeah, so let's go through the federal issues. So there are environmental issues that we would normally discuss with the member of Congress. We would discuss it with Majority Leader Schumer, Senator Gillibrand. Whether it's a personal issue like a passport or an immigration issue, we would bring that up to the attention of the member of Congress. In this case, I think it's very workable, and I'm very happy that Congressman D'Esposito has agreed to help us in Nassau County to funnel those types of requests to his office. And I will be speaking with Anthony D'Esposito and Andrew Garbarino if it's a House matter. And if it's a Senate matter, I communicate with the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Even though he's in the other party, he's been very responsive to Nassau County residents. And we will work out a system whereby the residents of the 3rd Congressional District will make sure that they get taken care of. But I just can't see any way that I or my colleagues can deal with someone who is, appearing to be a pathological liar.
Let me just clarify one thing. There are certain House rules, and those House rules we will strictly adhere to. And so there are issues that must go to the congressperson within the district, and our alternative would be to go to our United States senators. And many of the issues, for those of you who have been around and perhaps served in government, many times people will call, and they'll call a local office like the town of Hempstead, and it's a state senate or assembly issue, et cetera. So we'll work with all our elected officials. I always say that my attitude is that when we're on the field, we try to knock down the opponent and get into the end zone and score, and they do the same to us. As long as we play by the rules, when the game is over, we congratulate the winner, whether it be Republican or Democrat, and we work together until we're on the field again during the next campaign. So we will work with all our elected officials, and I think County Executive Blakeman will certainly spearhead that. But we will follow all House rules. So when there are House rules that exist, we'll certainly follow all of them. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.